You'll do it tonight without thinking about it. 2 minutes, a plastic brush, a mint paste that tastes like it came out of a lab because it did. You spit, you rinse, you go to bed. Now picture a skull pulled from a cave. A person who died 15,000 years ago and never touched a toothbrush once in their life. Their mouth should be a wreck. Instead, the teeth sit in the jaw straight, whole, unbroken. No braces ever pulled them into line. Fewer than 1 in 20 carries a cavity. So here is the question that should bother you. If they had no brush, no floss, no fluoride, and no dentist, why were their teeth often better than yours? The easy answer is sugar. No candy in the Stone Age, so no rot. Clean story. Everyone repeats it. But the real answer is far stranger. Because some ancient people got cavities anyway. Rotten, throbbing, abscessed ones. Thousands of years before farming, before bread, before a single grain of refined sugar existed. And when their teeth failed, a few of them did something you would never expect a Stone Age human to do. They drilled. Start in a cave in Morocco. Archaeologists call it Taferalt, the Grotte de Pigeons, a wide mouth of rock in the hills near the Mediterranean coast. In 2014, a scientist named Louise Humphrey and her team laid out the teeth of the people buried there. These people lived around 15,000 years ago. They were hunter-gatherers. No farms, no fields, no crops. And their teeth were destroyed. More than half of the adult teeth she examined had cavities. Half. That is worse than most people you know. So much for the clean story. What was rotting them? Not sugarcane, not honey cakes. Acorns. The people of Taferalt had found a wild food they could store through the lean months. Sweet acorns, pine nuts, and other starchy plants they gathered by the basketful and packed away. Starch is just sugar wearing a coat. It breaks down in your mouth into the exact fuel that mouth bacteria crave. Those bacteria eat, they excrete acid, and the acid drills microscopic holes in enamel. Do that for years, and the holes become craters. So here is your first twist. Cavities did not wait for farmers. The moment humans found a reliable stash of carbohydrates, the rot began. Taferalt is 15,000 years old, and its people were already losing the war in their own mouths. Which raises the next question. If the pain got bad enough, what could a person do about it, with no metal, no anesthetic, and no clinic? Go north, across the Mediterranean, into Italy. A rock shelter called Riparo Fredian in the hills of Tuscany. In 2017, a researcher named Gregorio Auxilia put a 14,000-year-old tooth under a microscope. He was looking at a set of front teeth from a single person. 2 of them had deep cavities boring straight down toward the nerve. Then he saw the scratches. Inside the cavity, running around its walls, were tiny parallel striations, not the smooth pit that decay leaves on its own. These were made by something hard and pointed, twisted against the tooth on purpose. Someone had taken a sharpened flint tool and scraped the rot out of a living cavity. There were even faint traces of a substance packed inside afterward, a kind of primitive filling. 14,000 years ago, in a cold Italian valley, one human held another's head still and dug the decay out with a stone. Imagine that on your own tooth. No injection, no numbing. Just a flint point and someone you trusted enough to let them try. That is the oldest dental work anyone has ever found. But it is not the only case, and it gets more organized from here. Travel east now, all the way to Pakistan, to a Neolithic town called Mehrgarh at the edge of the Indus Valley. This was a farming settlement, 9,000 years old. Researchers examining the graves there found something almost industrial. 11 teeth from 9 different people, each with a neat round hole bored into the crown. These were not decorations. The holes sat on the chewing surfaces, deep in the back molars, exactly where a toothache lives. The edges were perfectly circular and cone-shaped, the unmistakable signature of a drill spun fast against the enamel. The best guess is a bow drill, the same tool these people used to make beads, repurposed to bore into a suffering molar and relieve the pressure of decay. 9,000 years ago, in a mud brick town, someone kept a drill for teeth. Think about what that means. Somebody in that village was, in every way that matters, the dentist. So the picture is shifting under your feet. You were told ancient people had perfect teeth. Some did. But others had cavities as bad as yours, and a few of them had already invented the drill, the scrape, and the filling to fight back. Now for the myth everyone got wrong for 7,000 years. If you had a toothache in the ancient world and you asked why, you would almost always get the same answer. A worm. A tiny worm living inside your tooth, gnawing at it, and the pain was the worm moving. This was not a fringe idea. It was the official explanation across nearly the entire ancient world. There is a clay tablet in the British Museum, written in Mesopotamia around 3,700 years ago, that tells the whole story. It describes a worm that comes before the gods and asks what it will be given to eat. It is offered ripe fruit. The worm refuses. It demands instead to live between the teeth and the gums, to drink the blood and gnaw the roots. The tablet ends with instructions to mix a remedy and press it to the aching tooth. That belief, the toothworm, spread from Mesopotamia to Egypt, to China, to Europe, and it survived for thousands of years. Healers would hold a candle to a patient's jaw, wait for the smoke to raise a few small fibers from a heated seed, and point to them as the worms crawling out. People believed they had watched the enemy leave their own mouth. It took until 1728 for someone to kill the worm for good. A French surgeon named Pierre Fauchard sat down and wrote the first true textbook of dentistry. He had looked inside enough teeth to know the truth. There was no worm. He said so plainly and explained decay as a process of the tooth itself breaking down. And here is the quietly ugly part of the story. For all those centuries the worm belief survived, the standard treatment for a bad tooth was simple: yank it out. Barber surgeons pulled healthy and rotten teeth alike, chasing a creature that was never there, and left people toothless for a myth. Is it just me, or is 7,000 years a long time to blame a worm? So why, if cavities are this old and this common, do those cave skulls still look so good? Why is the average ancient hunter-gatherer's mouth straighter than yours even with no orthodontist alive? The answer is not their willpower. It is their food, and it is doing two separate things to their teeth. The first thing is your jaw. Their food was hard. Tough meat, fibrous roots, gritty seeds, dried plants that fought back against every bite. A growing child's jaw is like any muscle and bone. Load it, and it grows strong and wide. Their jaws got that load 10,000 times a day, so they grew broad enough to hold a full set of 32 teeth in a clean, even row. Now think about what you chew today. Soft bread, yogurt, a smoothie, pasta. Your jaw never got that workout. It grew up smaller than your ancestors, but your teeth stayed the same size, so they crowd and twist and shove for room that isn't there. Your crooked teeth and your impacted wisdom teeth are not a design flaw in your body. They are the receipt for a lifetime of soft meals. The second thing is what those meals do to the invisible world inside your mouth. And this is where the story turns genetic. In 2013, a scientist named Alan Cooper did something clever. He did not look at the teeth. He looked at the hardened plaque still stuck to them, the fossilized gunk we call dental calculus, scraped from skeletons across thousands of years. Locked inside that ancient tartar was the DNA of the bacteria that had lived in those mouths. He read it like a logbook of every mouth in history, and he found two sharp turning points. The first came when humans started farming. The moment grain entered the diet, the bacterial mix in the mouth tilted toward the acid-making species that cause decay. The second came far later, during the Industrial Revolution, when white flour and cheap sugar flooded ordinary diets. At that point, the diversity of the mouth collapsed. A few sugar-loving, acid-spitting bacteria took over almost completely, crowding out the balanced community that came before. Cooper's tartar showed the modern mouth becoming a less healthy, less varied place, one processed meal at a time. That is the deeper reveal. It is not just that you eat more sugar than a hunter-gatherer. It is that your entire inner ecosystem has been simplified into a machine for making cavities, and it happened in two steps you never agreed to. You can even watch it happen to one famous person. High in the Alps, a 5,000-year-old man froze into a glacier and stayed there until hikers found him in 1991. Ötzi the Iceman. In 2013, a researcher named Roger Seiler ran his skull through a CT scanner and read his mouth in 3 dimensions. Otzi had gum disease. He had cavities. He had a tooth cracked from biting something hard and enamel worn down by the gritty stone-ground grain in his bread. He was already a farmer, already eating processed carbohydrates, and his mouth was already paying the price we still pay today. So did ancient humans need dentists. Some did not. The oldest foragers, chewing hard wild food, often died with a straighter, cleaner set of teeth than modern dentistry can give you. But some needed one desperately, and a few of them, 14,000 years ago, actually became one. They picked up a flint, they steadied a friend's jaw, and they drilled into the dark, aching tooth because the pain left them no choice. That instinct never left you. The dread you feel in the waiting room, the tongue that keeps returning to the sore spot, the wince at something cold, that is not new. It is 15,000 years old, carried down from a cave in Morocco, where the acorns were sweet and the toothaches were real. You'll brush your teeth tonight without thinking about it. Your ancestors thought about theirs constantly, because for most of human history, a rotten tooth could kill you.